Hello, innovators. I'm Todd Wyant, and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast presented by Applied Software Great Tech Group. You're invited to join our conversation to model the future of construction innovation and the digital transformation adventure of this great industry. My guests today are John Lenker and Assaf Arie, the founders and CEO of Lenker. John is a brand strategist and communication artist who designs experiences that attract, inform, and invoke. And Assaf is a true entrepreneur in his own right and has led many startups from 0 to 8-figure businesses. Welcome to the show to both of you. Good to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. How'd you both get into this space?
Well, Assaf was first to the space, and he brought me in, so I'll let him tell the story.
Yeah. I got to that space from the customer standpoint. So I hired Lenker back in 2012. When I moved to the States, my family and I kind of came in to help a distressed business, and a big part of what we wanted to do was, rebrand and have a strong marketing strategy. And we were interviewing quite a few local companies around the Twin Cities area, and we came across Lenker, and John Lenker had a few interviews with him. It was a big decision for us. We had a few interviews with him. I think 3 or 4 times we met before we made a decision, and then since then I was a client between 2012 and 2019. And when I decided to leave the construction company, it was a concrete and foundation company with also concrete coatings. When I decided to leave, John approached me and offered to kind of join the Lenker team. So that's how I got into the marketing world.
Very nice. Very nice. What pulled you into the marketing side, coming from the construction side? What pulled you in on the marketing side?
It's when I was in the construction company, I was CFO, and I pretty much oversaw a big chunk of the operations, obviously the financials and the marketing piece. And I enjoyed working with the Lenker team at the time. I took it very personally to make the business successful, and I saw how marketing is a big part of it, and how taking the right steps, the right strategy, having the right marketing strategy allows us to truly grow the business and not just have like a nitro injection. Some initiatives you do, they'll get you a little nitro, get a little bit of gas, but it's not sustainable. And it was fun building sustainable marketing strategies to really grow the customer base from multiple levels, and not just the lead count and the referrals, the reputation, the repeat business, thinking through the customer journey, the lifetime customer value. All those things are not traditional in the construction world. Typically, you just think about the next job, the gross margin, and payroll on Friday, and we're able to think through that and plan ahead and do some fun stuff. And when I decided to leave the construction world, it was very appealing to me because we get to do that, and that piece alone without all the other stuff that it can get you drained out in construction, but be involved just with the fun stuff of helping businesses grow. That's what attracted me. It was not John's looks, if that's what you think. It was getting involved with businesses, helping them where it matters, and that's what attracted me.
Yeah, I love that. It's a cool segue too to where I wanted to open up the conversation. So, today's job market super competitive. What strategies can companies really look to employ to help attract and then retain that top talent?
It has a lot to do with with your brand, but I'm not referring to your name and logo, right? It's how you hold yourself and 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 how you treat your employees, but more than being nice to them. It's like you show a certain level of care, and it's part of your brand, it's part of your reputation, right? When I joined the company, it was a tight market, it was hard to hire, and we had 15 field employees. When I left, we had 120. It was hard to hire, and every year I remember the arguments that I had with the other partners and some of the other key individuals when I was putting the projections for the following year. And they said, "Well, how are we going to get to execute on it?" I said, "Well, we're doing good work. We're always attracting. Look at the last 7 years. We're always attracting, new talent in, and retention is a big thing because construction you get a lot of turnover, right? We were really good in retention, and we were competing with union shops, and we were not a signatory shop, right? We were a non-signatory, non-union shop, and we did offer competitive pay, but we found out it was not just the competitive pay. It's being open with the employees, share where the company is going, what the company is doing, how the company is doing, share how their jobs are doing, show them that you care about them, truly care about them, and show them that you care about the customers that are going and working on their backyards every single day. All of it together does really good job retaining the staff. When you see that there's the level of care is really high from the top versus some companies that it's all about how do I squeeze another dollar? How do I charge back to my employees? How do I push them and push and push? The employees, the second they have a better opportunity, they'll leave instantly unless you check mark on the other pieces. So listening to your employees when they have complaints, connecting with them annually, quarterly. Here, when a lot of your employees will have suggestions, and most employers in that field, they brush them off because they know better. So listening to them, taking action of some of the suggestions they have, that will get them engaged, that will get them retained, that will get them to bring their friends over. And we have a lot of it when we grew our employee base by hundreds of percentages. And those are the pieces from the operations side. I know John have some from the brand side, some more insights about that.
Yeah, well, I think mindset is really important. A lot of times the way that a business behaves sends certain signals, and obviously a business is projecting continuously the idea that we want to take care of our customers. We're going to do a good job. In the commercial industry, commercial construction, it's all about making sure that the project managers are getting what they expect, but also having an experience that's as hassle-free as possible. Things are getting done on time. We're here to work for you. We're your partner. All this kind of messaging that. So if you're some kind of sub, or if you're trying to get hired by a general contractor in one of the major trades, you're sending those kinds of messages. If you're a GC, you're talking to your developers and owners about all the value engineering you're going to do and all the things that you're going to do to make their life worth very much better when you hire them. And so the mindset is all around we're here doing creating all this value for you, our client, our customer, whatever. But rarely do businesses in the construction world apply that same principle to the workforce. Mm-hmm. They're not in the mindset of, we're here to serve you. This is the place that you want to come and work to grow your future and to provide for your family. This is a place that you can feel good about coming and take pride in. You're part of a team, and there's a bigger idea at play here in our company. It's not just about getting the work done. It's about the way that we do it and the camaraderie that we have and the benefits we all get, and how we share in, the upside of doing well. These kinds of things need to be thought through. Not just your standard benefits, health insurance, dental, this much vacation and a 401k, but creating an environment that's like a magnet that attracts the natural human things that people have inside them that makes them want to belong to something. And so part of branding is really creating an environment. It's a culture, it's a mindset, it's a set of principles that are not just written down on a piece of paper and forgotten about, but they're constantly being articulated in the day-to-day life of the culture of the business, reminding people that they're part of something important, that they are valuable, that there is a path for them here in this company, that we want to invest in you. You're the best part of us is our employees, those kinds of things, but not just in mottos on the wall, but in the mindset, in the care, the emotional intelligence that is used in dealing with issues, the mentoring, the thinking ahead and working with everybody to create an individual development plan. Hey, we're partners in you building your future. What are we going to do this year? Where do you want to be in a year in your career? What kind of skills do you want to have? What do you want your income to be? How can we collaborate together on helping you get to those goals, right? One of the big principles that we try to convey when we're mentoring people around hiring is that it costs so much money to bring in a new employee. Recruiting them, training them, acclimating them. It's a big investment, and if you don't think in terms of retention, if you don't think in terms of I don't want it to be that in 2 years this employee thinks, what, I've gone as far as I can with this company, I need to start looking somewhere else. The way you fix that is that you start by saying to the employee, look, what's the 2-year plan for your life? What are your goals in 2 years, 3 years? Where do you see yourself? What is your income going to be? And thinking in terms of an open road. Tell us where you want to go in this industry, and we're going to be your partner in helping you get there. We're going to actually adjust our agenda to fit making sure your growth plans actually materialize, so that no matter where you want to navigate in your career, you're going to find a home with us, because we're about facilitating your growth and help guiding you to achieve your goals. We're your partner in that. Now, if you just listen to the way I'm talking about this already, you can see what I'm talking about in terms of mindset. When you start talking this way to people, and they can see and they can feel that you're invested in them, immediately there is something that's differentiated from other people that are hiring. So these are the kinds of things that, when they materialize, makes people, in this case, the audience of potential employees or existing employees, believe that you're a market leader. And so that's what a brand is. It's a brand is what people believe about you. And just as important as, the client and customer and consumer audiences, and caring about what they believe about you and crafting your messages and crafting a value proposition that's going to resonate, just like that, we have to think about our employees and prospective employees as an audience, and that we have to give proper attention to how do you nurture belief in the marketplace that makes everybody want to work for us, because they know that we're differentiated. So these are the things that really matter when it comes to employee retention. Like Assaf said earlier, it's not about, I can make 50 cents more an hour with you, that's why I'm here. It's because I believe that I'm part of something here, and I believe that this is the place where my future is going to come to its highest potential. And unless you take the time to craft messaging around that, to kind of game plan your organizational strategy, your employee development strategy, and actually put plans into place, your individual development plans, your IDPs, unless you craft and engineer those with as much care and concern as you do your marketing strategy to get new business, then you're never going to actually materialize that kind of value proposition that's going to not only be understandable by the workforce, but they're going to believe it. They're going to get it, and they're going to want to be a part of you. So to me, this is the core of how you differentiate yourself as an employer in the construction industry. And if you get on board doing this now, there's so few people who are doing that. I mean, just all you have to do is go to the websites of your competitors, type in keywords, whatever, find the top 10 and look at what they say about careers. Now, some will have a careers page, but what is there? What information is there? How much effort has gone into creating a story, to painting a picture, and offering tangible benefits that are differentiated? It's very rare. It does happen, but this is where the big opportunity is to stand out in the crowd as a business who's hiring.
Yeah, more than agree. How do you encourage construction companies to take the time to invest in that mindset change and really focus on the brand perception in order to create that strong brand storyline?
Well, a lot of times it comes down to numbers, right? I mean, you can model out what happens when you have a lot of turnover. You can model out the financial impact of that. You can model out, statistics around caring versus not caring, investing in employees 360 degrees. The whole person mentality, not just I'm going to bribe them with money and I can treat them like garbage, but they'll stick around because they want that paycheck. Gone are those days, right? You have to think about the whole person, and you have to think about all the things that impact them: work-life balance, accommodating some of the challenges that come up in this day and age. Just as an example, this is going to sound so far. I guarantee this hasn't come up in any of your podcasts, but just think about autism and the challenge that families are facing having kids that are diagnosed with autism. When your kid is diagnosed with autism, suddenly you're having to go to school for parent-teacher conferences that are, not scheduled. You're having to go to healthcare visits. There's specialists there's all this pressure and stress. And if your employee is facing that, and there's going to be, probably a large percentage of your audience right now listening to this is going to go, oh my gosh, he's talking about me. I'm going through this right now, or I've got employees going through this right now. Well, what can a company do to think through accommodating the challenges that their employees face, so that when they face these inevitable challenges, that you actually have sort of a track for them to follow? There's support things that can happen at work. There's accommodations that can be made. There's, some places will have, certain people be floating and available to fill in based on the fact that somebody's got to be gone. If you got a site supervisor who suddenly has, some healthcare challenge, what happens when that person can't be there, from 1:30 to 3:30 on Tuesday, fighting that and dealing with that on the fly is inefficient. It's ineffective. People are going to screw up. They're going to say the wrong thing. They could even say something that's going to get them in legal trouble. But game planning these kinds of things out, thinking through, workshopping, take a retreat, some weekend, the management, ownership of the company, go and talk to your middle management layer and think through the whole person. What are the aspects of our employees that we need to make sure we're addressing? Do we have a plan? Do we have a framework in our minds for these things? What can we do to help? Right?
Yeah.
So these are the kinds of things that when you really work on them and develop them, they do differentiate you. And the return on investment is huge. It's huge. When you think of all the things that cost money when things stop, when you have turnover, when there's somebody who's distracted because they're suffering from something, or they're distracted with something at home, and mistakes are made and they cost tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes. So there is a financial side that can influence the ownership of these businesses to do the right thing. And that's what we advocate for.
Yeah. No, I think it's huge because we're all people at the end of the day, and you can't separate what's going on in your everyday personal life. That doesn't, you don't just drop that off at the door. You bring all that with you when you come in during your work hours and everything. So you got to be able to care about the person behind the employee and be able to have that conversation of what's going on, like, and show that empathy, show that you care for them, and that goes a huge way. Kind of shifting a bit, so no company has unlimited resources. How do you get innovative with branding efforts without breaking the bank? And are there some creative examples of companies that you've seen really successfully be able to achieve and accomplish it?
Well, kindness is free. And so much of what works is really, the greatest weight to it is in the idea itself.
Mm-hmm.
So having the right ideas can be really important. And doing kind of a cost benefit analysis that looks at the relative costs of different kinds of outcomes, and being reasonable about investing what you can afford into the things that are going to have the maximum impact. So thinking through this, analyzing this, we've actually had engagements with, businesses that are doing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue and multi-billions of dollars in revenue that are centered exclusively around helping with the employee culture, attracting and retaining employees.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, without naming names, there are innovations. I know innovation is a big part of your program. And I again, I can't disclose any details, but I can tell you some of the recommendations we've made have as much to do with creating accommodations around things that are really getting people stuck than they do with the direct pay and bonuses and those kinds of incentives. But creating amenities, creating opportunities for people to kind of recalibrate themselves mentally and emotionally, having guidelines and rules in place that de-escalate certain situations, putting training in place for supervisors that gets them certified in principles of emotional intelligence. A lot of these things don't have to cost a lot of money, but when they start working, it immediately becomes clear that the financial aspect of it's going to work out very well.
How do you encourage people to take ownership of their stories and then be able to share it effectively that stays also in line with the company's brand story that they're putting out into the world?
Well, it starts by making space for thinking through your value proposition, right? And thinking through what your key differentiators are. A brand is kind of like an unfolding of the idea around your value proposition. So when somebody hears your name, it represents something. And then maybe they hear your slogan or your tagline, and then they get just a little bit more depth into that value proposition. And then they hear what your key differentiators are, and it's a little bit more. And it just kind of unfolds. The thinking around your differentiation, it takes time, it takes space. It takes creating an opportunity for people who have talent for guiding this kind of exercise to get involved. That's why our company exists, actually, is to create a space and a time where, based on a real thorough market opportunity analysis, competitive analysis, we do a lot with just kind of absorbing everything about the competitive field, like literally everything they say and do. We suck that up into a database, and we create profiles and comparative analysis so that we know exactly what everybody says, who you're competing with in any given location. And we then craft messaging that is head and shoulders above the competition. We create visualization. We do everything necessary for you to be positioned as a market leader. But again, it's not just what you say about yourself. It's not just about how you look. It's how you think through the value proposition that you really have. And here's what's at the core of that is this question. This is like the secret sauce right here. Here's the question. What could we do or become that if we did it and became it would make us the undeniable solution in the market? What could we do differently than we're doing now? What could we change? What could we become that if we did that or became that, anybody who got even faintly acquainted with us would say, oh my gosh, I'd be crazy to choose anything else but this company.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know in this industry, so much of it comes down to, you're bidding on projects and there, who knows what goes into, who gets chosen, right? It can be price, it could be schedule, it could be capabilities, it could be proven track record. There's a lot of very practical things, but all else being equal, right? You get 2 or 3 competitors that are about the same cost. They've got about the same capabilities. And you start to get into this arena of, who do I want to see win? Who would I like to give the business to? And we all know that's based on relationships. So much of it is. But, what are the values behind those relationships? And especially when you get into larger projects, multi-million, $100 million projects, there's so much more at stake than just the interpersonal part of the sales process, right? There are things that need to be scrutinized and analyzed and understood. And the confidence that the developer or, the owner group needs to have in the key vendors they're choosing, the key partners they're choosing, it's going to extend into a lot of details. And have you done your due diligence? Have you documented how you have your act together at a level that nobody else does? Mm-hmm. And do you even know not just the practical checklists that the people that are choosing you are going through, but what the psychological drivers are that are helping them form the impression whether they check the box or not, right? So many of us have had this happen where it's like, well, what are they talking about? I'm not qualified to do X, Y, Z. Look at our showcase. We've got all sorts of things like that. How come they didn't see that? We see it. How come they didn't see it? You didn't understand the psychological triggers. They didn't get it the way that you think they should. And it extends to people working for you, and it extends to people hiring you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question. I think it's a good question that people can sit on for sure. It's a great takeaway. So one of our kind of key thread lines that we pull, you mentioned is around innovation. What does innovation mean to you both?
For me, innovation is trying new things and not be afraid of failing on them, right? You need to, otherwise you become that company that's doing it for 30 years, the same thing, right? And you fall behind.
This is the way we've always done it.
I hear it all the time. Oh, we've been doing it for 30 years, right? That's maybe why we're here to help you today, right? Is don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to test new things, to try new things, new methods. Don't accept facts unless it's an atom, right? Like drill down, argue, question everything, and try to always improve. And that, the thinking of always improving pushes innovation, right? You're not going to be afraid to try new things. Manage the risk, obviously. Don't risk it all on just for the sake of trying something new, right? Make sure you're hedged. But push yourself, push your team, try new things, and measure and continue from there. So innovation is having a mindset of always improving and not being afraid to take a step, because otherwise you become the Nokias of the world or Kodak, and that's what happened when you're lacking innovation, right? Mm-hmm. You become obsolete at some point. It may take a year, it may take 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, but you'll become obsolete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. John, what about you?
I actually Michael Gerber, he wrote a book called The E-Myth back in the 80s, and it's been revised a couple times. And he makes a big point about the difference between creativity and innovation. And he says that creativity, and this is paraphrased, but creativity is having a good idea. And innovation is being able to implement a good idea in a way that leads to successful outcomes for all stakeholders. Being able to put it into action and putting in the systems and the processes, building the organization that can deliver results based on the creativity. That's what real innovation is. And so it's the responsibility of the owners of a business. And I'd recommend that book, The E-Myth, even though it's an older book. It's really valuable. That it's up to the owners of an organization to really put in that structure, to think through the structure and put it in place in a way that leads to the ability to really deliver on the ideas in a repeatable, sustainable way. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's where creativity. One of the things that makes Assaf and I a good team. I've always been kind of the balloon kind of floating up into the sky with all of my ideas. And Assaf is, like the string and the stake in the ground that kind of keeps me anchored to earth. And you can kind of pull on that string and, control its altitude and, those two things together, the innovation, the vision, the big thinking, but the practical reality, the financial accountability, the restraint. Those things need to wrestle with one another. And it's, since Assaf, the reason I asked Assaf to come in, he was a little bit modest about his background, but he comes from a family that has, been, the biggest players in the construction industry in at least one field. And then they entered another and helped build one of the most successful companies in that other field. And I knew that if Assaf, working with him, he beat me up so bad when I was his vendor. I knew that if somehow I could get him on ice, remember in The Lion King, the two little animals that were like, what if we could get the lion on our side? What if he could be on our side? And it's funny because lion is one of I think his family name means lion. But, that the idea was let's get somebody into the mix who has that grounded perspective, who can bring the structure, who can bring the discipline around this kind of visionary thinking that we'd always done. And since we joined forces like this, our company has grown, I think 10, 15x. So I recommend innovation be thought through in that kind of way, the creativity and the vision with the practicality and the discipline.
Yeah, I think it's a good framework for it because it for sure requires both in order to implement successfully and implement well for success. So yeah, spot on there. How do people find out more information and connect with you all?
They can go to lenker.com/BTG for bridging the gap. Lenker.com/BTG. And they can, we'll have a little bit of a wrap-up video after this. Assaf and I will record, but we'll also have a PDF they can download about things to avoid when wanting to grow a construction business, a successful construction industry business.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Last question for you. If I could give you all power, you could snap your fingers and innovate one thing in the industry, what would you pick to innovate?
For me, it will be something around culture. I don't know how to pin it down. There's certain cultural there's sometimes in that field there's selfishness, and it needs to change. That's why a lot of people are afraid to buy construction because they're afraid to get screwed, and that needs to change. That shouldn't be the norm, right? So it's culture through building trust. I don't know if it's answered the question, but hopefully
I see where you're going with it.
That's deep stuff. Mine's a lot more shallow.
I like it. It's dichotomy there. Okay. But I thought you were supposed to be the balloon, John, and Assaf was supposed to be the string. You guys are reversing roles
Well,
here.
he made me look so boring. Hey, I have these
Okay.
crazy ideas, and this
Yeah.
guy always shut them down. So I had to come, I had to squeeze myself here.
My innovation would be how to get rid of rain days in the construction industry. How to get rid of rain days. If you could figure out how to get rid of rain days, I don't know if you some kind
Make
of
a lot
force
more days
field.
to work. Yeah.
I must say, John, I bow to you about this. When you were talking earlier, I wanted to say the year that I left, the spring when I left the concrete shop, we had a kind of a spring event before the season. Winters here in the Midwest are very slow, right? A lot of the team members are laid off, and then we get to a very busy season with a lot of overtime. So overall, they're putting their 1,900 hours a year, but there's there's very little work in the winter and 55 hour work weeks in the summer. But I one of the things I did, I got all the team to think a little bit through my lens, right, as the financial person, and I put a lot of interesting data points for them. And one of the data points I showed them is how much money we're losing on a rainy day, and they were shocked how much money it costs to move this place, and how much revenue we lose when everyone sits at home. So John, that's a yes, but without destroying Earth at the same time.
There you go. This is the force field. It protects it for a little bit, but the water still gets to the ground.
Yeah. Raining at night and weekends, it's okay.
There you go. I like it. Awesome. Well, guys, thanks so much for taking the time and coming on the show today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Todd.